Oh, look, I haven't even given myself credit for being a plant nerd today. Hey, I'm Grant. This is the bird emergency, but this is habitat gardening that I don't know, we just talk casually. Habitat, gardening, wildlife, all the interconnections between between them. Um, Cocky mug, coffee, uh, co-host here. Do you want to introduce yourself? Come on, there we are. Loz is with us again. Loz is, as you may know, my housemate, avian advisor, um, co-host, sometimes co-host. There we are. He has a playpen just there, so he's quite happy to muck about. How are you? Where are you? That's the first thing I'd like to know. Um, we haven't done this for a while. Tell me where you're listening or watching from, and then we can sort of get started. I'm going to jam my first seen and heard into this as well this morning. So let's start with that. My first seen and heard, unfortunately, nothing exciting, was the introduced invasive species, the spotted dove, but a bird that I'm increasingly growing to like. Probably because I've only got the choice of the crested pigeon here and the spotted dove. I don't get the amazing peaceful dove or I don't get bronzewings here. So I just like watching their amazing antics. Uh, but I did notice something out fairly early this morning. And let me know if you're noticing changes where you are too. Oh, by the way, I'm in Wurundjeri country, the unceded lands of the Wurundjeri people. Thanks, Loz. He's acknowledging as well. And that's Melbourne, southeastern Australia. And we're coming into the cold part of the year. And I haven't really noticed this before, that as autumn has been very quiet for all the birds in my local patch. And if you're regularly talking or listening to me, watching, I prefer it when you talk to me. It's much more fun. There hasn't been a whole lot going on. There hasn't been a lot of variety of birds, but there also hasn't been a lot of activity. I'm not hearing as much at the moment, and not seeing as much as I usually do. So I noticed with joy today that the red wattlebirds are starting to chase each other around in the eucalypts that fringe my local park and directly across from my front door. And the Eucalyptus leucoxylon in the extremities, the corners of the park, are just starting to flower again, their second flush of flowers. Noisy miners are also getting active. I don't know if you can hear. The spotted doves are calling out there, and they're now doing all their courtship displays. The sparrows are starting to. I assume, I don't know that much about the behaviours of the house and the tree sparrows here. I intend to learn, but they're far more vocal and a greater variety of vocalisations. So I think they're all getting into the pairing up, at least courtship. I notice in many of the birdwatching forums, not only in Australia but in Southeast Asia and the subcontinent, coels are getting busy. So maybe we're getting into that great time where the breeding season really starts, really kicks into gear. Excuse me. So, hey, I'm waiting. Where are you listening / watching from? Let me just check. I know there's a lot of Twitters again. Facebook, Twitch, Twitterers. Twitterers. Where are you from? Did you catch my conversation with Myron Belay about redevelopment. I such a difficult, such a broad topic, and so many different ways to approach it. Was It was fun. We're going to do more about development, redevelopment. Here we go. Who's this? Glenn. Hello, Glenn. You never let me down. You're at the Mount Annan Australian Botanic Gardens again. How's the weather in the western edge of Sydney today, or really the southwestern edge of Sydney today? Wow. Did you see the news about the floods in Kenya? That was pretty horrific. It's just going on, isn't it? It's just going on. That's why I get so frustrated. I really want to just have some fun today. We're going to talk broad strokes about a couple of things I get asked about a lot. I get asked about, how do you deal with weeds? How do I stop weeds coming into my garden? Guess what? You can't. You can't. So if you are one of those people that is fastidiously tidy and can't deal with a little bit of mess, weeds are going to drive you crazy in your garden because they're always going to be around. Glenn saying, not raining here, overcast, damp, so good for fungi. Oh, that's great. No hash light, so good light for bird photography day. No harsh light. That's what Glenn's saying. So a good day for bird photography. Well, I hope you find something good. I hope, if you're on Twitter, I hope you follow Sandy Horn. Sandy's been on Photography Friday a few times. Glenn's been on Photography Friday. Much loved amateur, but increasingly good bird photographer, wildlife photographer, astronomy photographer, Sandy Horn. She'd been suspended from Twitter for months. I'm sure she won't mind me sharing. She reported an account that was impersonating her. Right? And thanks, Patrick, too. Patrick Kavanagh. Let's just acknowledge Patrick Kavanagh on Flickr. He enables his images to be used under the Creative Commons license, which means we can share them and not put them on merchandise and stuff like that. So, yeah, but thank you, Patrick. This is my favourite shot of a brown thornbill behind me. So Sandy had reported an account that was basically ripping off her stuff and impersonating her. So good. That account got reported and terminated, but then they suspended Sandy. I think Sandy said to me yesterday, I think it took her. Actually, let me check. I'm going to just check so I don't misrepresent the number. Come on. Just bear with me, folks. I know it can, but this is thing. Oh no, she's most of it. I think that she talked about was was actually in public. Yeah, she reported a clone account. They shut the fake account down, then shut hers down as well. I think I saw in her public feed that it was like several dozen appeals that it took, but she's back, so that's great. So do follow Sandy, at Sandy Horn, SandyHorne 61. So yeah, no, that was good. And look, before we get into more weeds and mulching and a little bit of watering, let's see. Coming up on Monday with me is me. And we're going to talk about a bit more of a news review, but I really want to talk about just quickly the state of avian influenza around the world. About a month away from having Michelle Villa back on the show. It'll probably be what would be the third time I think we talk about avian pandemics and avian influenza. But I just want to show. She put out something yesterday. Actually retweeted something from, I think, the Department of Primary Industries about what to do if you see birds that you think may be affected by avian influenza. At the moment, Australia doesn't have any confirmed cases of Australian influenza, but it's almost sure that it will come here. And then there was some other research about perhaps birds like swallows will be, because they travel so far and they will build nests and whatnot in sheds and whatnot, that they may be a vector from wild populations into production and avicultural and agricultural populations of birds. So anyway, that's one thing I'm going to do on Monday, and just try and find some really good news. Melbourne City Council announced yesterday that in line with the Victorian government's state budget that comes out on Tuesday, there's going to be funding for 9 more urban parks. So that's good news. So I'm digging into that a bit more. So there we go. Some good news to talk about. Because, boy, jingos, it's been horrible stuff going through the social media feeds. If you'd been following the patch of woodland at Lee Point, Darwin, where Millie and I were for, I was there for 3 days. Saw Gouldian finches, masked finches, double bars, longtails. What else did we see there? Saw so many finches. Far eastern curlews used that beach area as a stop-off point. And now there's just going to be thousands of houses there. I don't know a lot about the mammals, the native mammals that were there, but that whole patch of ground now has no trees, no bushes on it. Probably still got some grass. So it's been totally cleared. So even if there's some kind of reversal on the decision there to build thousands of houses, that habitat's gone, never to return. So this is why we try so hard, and why those really tireless campaigners put all the effort into it. You know, the Larrakia people, supported by the local community of conservationists and just basically people interested in green space in the city. That's why we don't shut up. So Tuesday, Nicola Toki, the president of Forest and Bird in New Zealand, which is basically the equivalent organisation to BirdLife Australia in Aotearoa, New Zealand, will be joining me to talk about the proposed fast track legislation there, which would allow major developments such as mines and some of the agricultural pursuits to just basically be exempted from the current approvals mechanisms. I've followed it a little bit, but Nicola will join me at I think it's 2 p.m. New Zealand time, which will make it 4 p.m. here. No, it won't. It will make it. Will that make it midday here? I've got to check. Anyway, I'll start promoting that when that's all locked in. And on Wednesday, Dr. David Watson from Charles Sturt University is back to talk about mistletoes. Ties in with habitat gardening, so I'll probably we'll probably replay that as a habitat gardening show too down the track. But unpacking, blowing apart, smashing the myths and legends about mistletoes and probably some of the other plants that Dave's been involved in some of the research. Also want to ask him a bit about the latest with acoustic monitoring that he may be aware of. And he's recently been on some pretty cool trips. So, yeah, we'll just basically catch up with Dave. Following Monday, Gregory Andrews joins me for Monday discussion, really talking about the protests that he's been involved in and some of the conversations he's had with some of the people in and around Parliament House about a range of issues, climate change, obviously, biodiversity preservation. So that should be interesting to get that. So yeah, there's a few more things coming up, but those are the ones that are confirmed for right now. I haven't started Instagram. Let's start Instagram. Sorry, Instagram. Sorry, Sorry, Instagram. I got talking and was yeah. I'll have to put the Instagram warning up. Okay, back to weeds. Weeds sometimes aren't a problem, right? And we need to, if we're trying to bring wildlife into the garden, weeds provide habitat. Maybe not for the animals or the birds that you are desirous to bring close to your backyard or to look at out your window. But we have to always take the holistic view. There's all sorts of arthropods. There's all sorts of creepy crawlies, for want of a better term. But, fungi. You might get infections, undesirable infections that you would think about on plants. And you think, I've got to get rid of that. But no, there's always another organism that uses it. So if it's not causing significant problems for you, try and leave it, and especially when we talked about butterflies, a month or two back. Try and leave a patch that can be weedy and unkempt for those. What are you doing, Loz? For those creatures. You want weeds to go to seed because small seed-eating birds and lots of insects eat those seeds. They take them away and store them as a food source. Admittedly, you don't want things like fire ants in your yard, but you do. It's beneficial to have some ants and some wasps and some beetles and some wood lice and slaters and all sorts of things. So yeah, don't think of every plant that isn't a targeted Grevillea, Melaleuca, Leucopogon, Protea, Waratah. Not every plant is a problem. Now, if you want to control weeds, or if there are parts of your garden that you want to keep weeds out of, apart from removing them, physically removing them, the best thing to do is to suppress them. And you can either suppress the growth or you can suppress the opportunity for new seeds to germinate. And let me tell you that there are weed seeds in every bit of soil, unless you have bought soil that has been heat treated, sterilised, and then kept not in a big pile, in a big heap in some distribution centre, unless it has been kept under tarpaulins and there's no chance of anything blowing in underneath, or sealed in a bag. There's going to be weed seeds in any soil that you use. In the top few centimetres of soil, and in mulch too, in everything you use, there will be weed seeds. You will be dealing with weeds. So just turn down your pressure dial. You know, the best thing about weeds is if you do physically pull them out, then you've got the basis for some really good compost. And what's compost good for? Nutrition for your garden and mulch. But we'll get to mulch in a minute. What are you looking for? What are you doing down there? By the way, after, what are we in? The 5th month. So it's taken 4 months for me to be able to get Loz to step up onto my fingers. He's still not totally there, but he's now accepting that that's a fun thing to do. And I haven't even started the target training and the special foods. But here we are. Loz is back. So how do you suppress weeds? You suppress weeds with either mulch or with hard, mulch, vegetation as well. And you need to open your mind about what mulch is. You can have a living mulch. Your ground covers can be your mulch. And they're highly effective if you get a very dense ground cover that is in a really healthy position. There's a handful of Grevilleas that are fantastic for it. Oh, thanks for that, Loz. Danger of having a lorikeet. They're very poopy. So there's lots of techniques you can use for mulch as weed suppression that can also sort of help out in your recycling. I've gone away from the idea of using paper and cardboard. I used to do it a lot. Years ago, I used to use old carpet, but that's a bad way to deal with that kind of waste. It can work, but it's quite harmful. You're much better to dispose of it properly and try and get parts of it recycled if you can, but you don't want to be adding. There's plastic in most carpets in some shape or form, and there can be volatile and dangerous chemicals. I was certainly very naive about this when I used to use old carpet to use as a preparatory mulch when establishing new vegetable garden beds. You know, if I had large areas, I would find stuff like that to use as a suppression, well, basically to mean we didn't have to dig up the grass or whatever was already there. I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about. Let me just to say hello, Instagram. If you are wanting to comment or join in on Instagram, you need to be patient because your comments and things don't come. Loz, Loz is on my keyboard, which means he's in danger of typing messages. I think we'll just get him. Come on, come on. Oh, he's all over the desk now. This will be great. No, don't, not on there. Come on, come on. Got him. Got him. Now I can get rid of that. There we go. Sorry, folks. Super professional on a Saturday morning. Oh, no, he really wants to go over there. Yeah, so don't be tempted to use all those kind of things. I was leading there with cardboard and paper and things like that. Again, if you're putting it near vegetable gardens, you probably don't want some of the compounds in the inks and glues and stuff which get used on packaging anywhere near being ingested, taken up by the plants, and then possibly ingested by you or others. So, yeah, I'm kind of against that nowadays. But weeds make fantastic mulch, allowing for the fact that there will probably be weed seeds there, but as a basis to build up mulch, weeds are great. Preferable if they're composted first, but things like weeds and hay, stuff like that can be great if you need to bulk it up. So mulches as a suppressor is one of the purposes for using mulch. And mulch and weeds go naturally hand in hand because you can get a lot of mulch from weeds, and you can also use weeds as a suppression agent without them being composted. But you will need to put something else on top generally. Lois, come over here. Get out of there. Come on, come on, come on. That's it. That's it. Come over here. Good boy. I'll just see what he did on there. No, he didn't. Good. So compost for your mulch. When you use vegetation, be it composted or not, there's something you need to understand about the decomposition process. Vegetation as it decomposes requires nitrogen to get that cycle of composting, of changing it from one form into the breakdown form of all the compounds, of all the things that make up your plant. So when you put vegetation directly on the soil, and especially if it's around plants, the first thing that it does as it breaks down, as the microorganisms that are involved in that process, the first thing they do is take the readily available forms of nitrogen from the soil, thus outcompeting the plants. Loz is on the monitor now. He's about to be in front of the camera. There we are. Super Loz. Come here. Come on. So, if you've got young plants and really vigorously growing plants, you don't want to be putting uncomposted mulch down. Unless, of course, you don't care if the plants have suffer from that effect of what we call nitrogen drawdown. Or you can compensate for that by applying some kind of fertilizer. But I think in today's day and age, it's best to try and get away from adding inorganic fertilizers if you possibly can. So, so that leads to you can use weeds as a mulch before you compost them, but it's preferable to compost them. Good on you, Loz. Come here, buddy. Come on. Hey, come on. Come on. Yeah. Oh, no, he loves the screen. Oh, he's looking at himself. Come on. Come on. Yeah, so compost. And there's there's a number of ways to do that. Compost bin or something like a tumbler or a great big heap or a series of beds. There's a number of ways to do it. I'm not going to talk a lot about that now because that's a whole other episode. But I think you're crazy if you are not maintaining some way of composting. If you're in a situation like I am, in a very small unit, and having a heap or a series of beds is difficult, there are machines that are like rapid composters that you can get, that you can basically use in a way like the old, remember the waste disposal units that used to go in the sink and that would chop everything up and then it would just go out into the sewage. This is something different where it basically does that mastication process, that chopping up process, and then heat and pressure turns it into something a bit more usable. You can use something like that, and I'm contemplating getting one now, but I haven't found it, and I haven't found a place that I'm confident buying it from. Let me say that just now. In combination with a worm farm, which takes up far less space, and that will get you lots of material that you can use as fertilizer and compost. So, yeah, here I must make a video. We've got a tumbler, and it's a 2-chamber tumbler, and a worm farm, and I use them in combination to produce. Well, I use it for soil, but you can use compost as mulch, knowing that as it breaks down, you need to keep adding to it. But to deal with that nitrogen drawdown situation, you can put compost or worm castings down, and then if you've got lots of woody weeds, say you've had a big patch of woody weeds that you've needed to clear, or prunings, that goes on top. So then you get your weed suppression, you get your nutrient for the plants, and you. Oh, he's trying to bite the icons on the second monitor. Yeah, Loz, that's not going to work, buddy. Yeah, come on. So the other thing I get asked a lot from people, well, there's two other questions, and probably inspired by what they see happening in their neighbourhood. How thick should you mulch? Now that depends on a couple of things. Do you need to mulch deeply to suppress regrowth of from weeds in the seed bank? Sometimes you can minimise the amount of weeds that actually are successful in becoming visible to you because there's not enough energy in the weed seed and in the surrounding growing medium to allow them to grow enough to push through your mulch. So I know it's an answer that's a bit like how long is a piece of string, but it needs to be pretty thick. That's for weed suppression. Then you've got evaporation. You want to reduce evaporation. thin mulch, and especially mulch that uh, retains retains a lot of heat and gets very hot. Uh, that and trans conducts water easily. That can be a problem if it's not very thick. Uh, Using combination of mulches can overcome that. Often you can use something like your compost, and then over the top you can put rocks and pebbles or sticks and leaf litter and things like that. But also bear in mind that now when you're getting that kind of bushland kind of mulch, where does that come from? In a lot of cases, it's a byproduct of some kind of land clearing. So choosing wisely, I think, is important, and researching where your mulch comes from. Often if you're getting cheap mulch that someone's just put through a mulcher and a chipper and left in a pile for a matter of weeks, that's often full of weed seeds and full of things like ligustrum, the camphor laurel, a privet. Sometimes if it's been chipped and not composted properly, you're actually getting rhizomes, the growing shoots from a whole heap of weeds, or maybe bulbils of weeds, onion weed, wandering jew, kikuyu, couch grass. There's an awful lot of cheap crap out there, so I would suggest not sort of cutting corners. Get your own production system in place, and again too, it keeps the nutrients that you've got in your garden, in your place. So I got sidetracked, didn't I, a little bit? By the way, are you finding any of this useful, folks? Seems to be a lot of you here, so that's very good. I'm happy about that. Are you finding this useful? So, how thick? How thick for the mulch? Thick enough to suppress weed growth, to reduce evaporation, and you want to almost reduce evaporation to zero. And the other thing that you might, depending on your site, you want to also suppress runoff, so that if you do get a heavy deluge of rain, that the mulch can absorb a lot of that water, keep it down, available to the plants, retain as much of it like a sponge as it can, so that when the obvious surface water has infiltrated or run off, you still have a store of water available to the plant roots and to all the microorganisms that are around it. You need to understand that for your plants to thrive, your soil needs to be healthy. Soil is not dirt. Soil is a complete community of organisms that inhabit that top zone of your soil profile. So, yeah, soil is not dirt. You need to tune into that too. So you want to discourage runoff, because when you have runoff, you lose nutrient and you'll often have erosion issues. Glenn, if you're still listening, Glenn had some really good ways of dealing with issues perhaps of runoff, and I don't know if Glenn has problems with runoff, but Glenn does have a sloping block. So you can use things like sticks, small logs, bricks, large pieces of stone, rocks, stones, rubble. You can also use things like rubble, and then you can disguise it with other material. And then you can put compost and another mulch on top, so that you make those places reservoirs of nutrient and microorganism activity, and then in a not very long part of time, space of time, that becomes a great place to plant something. So yeah, now Glenn's got a comment here. What does Glenn say? Always useful. Good. We put food scraps through the food processor. Yeah, that's a really good idea. And then into the compost bin. I tend to chop it up sort of by hand. Plant materials go through the mulcher shredder, then into the compost, turned over every few days in the top chamber of the bin. Okay, so you've got one of those sort of triple level bins, have you? The triangular, or the rhomboid kind of shape, or you know what I mean. Shaped more like a Dalek than a cylinder. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because the smaller the pieces, the greater the surface area of the bit of material that goes into your compost, the quicker the microorganisms that do the breaking down get to work. Bearing in mind, your compost bin needs to be the right temperature, have the right levels of humidity, so the right amount of available moisture, and the right proportion of roughage. So compost is a whole different thing. I've invited a few compost people on to talk about how they do their composting. But that's a great tip, Glenn. The food processor is good, because often with the food processor, what you get seems to be fairly wet. That's where you might need to be adding some drier material. Otherwise, you might then get something that turns sludgy in your compost bin. You will be overcoming that by doing your regular turning. But one of the biggest problems with compost is people don't turn it over. You must aerate your compost. But again, we'll do compost in detail another time. And why did I pick weeds, mulch / compost and irrigation in sort of to put them all together? Because the best kind of irrigation that you can do, watering that you can do, really relies on being effective by having some sort of mulch. You want something on the top of the soil that stops the evaporation, but you also want something that is water retentive enough underneath to stop that runoff, because every time you get runoff, you are wasting some of the water that you apply. And keeping your plants growing really as optimally as you can is to apply enough water but never too much water. And using that holistic idea again too is you are not only watering your plant, even though that's where you want to target most of your watering, you are trying to water that whole zone in a way that keeps that the microorganisms, that whole biome working. So unless you're in a really arid zone and all the life is adapted to deluge and then drying out, in most garden situations we're wanting to ensure that things don't go completely dry. But you don't want to overwater. So it can be difficult, and experience really helps. But one of the best ways to make sure you are not overwatering is to start with drip irrigation or subsurface irrigation. I don't want to use the term really, but sort of slow release water. And that way you can experiment with starting slow and then move up. And we'll get to, Glenn's got another comment which is really helpful in a minute. We'll do that. um, you can buy drippers or the drip tube or um, a whole heap of emitters that regulate, that tell you how much water will be released over a period of time. So if it's 2 litres an hour, depending on the makeup, the composition of your growing media, your soil, that 1 hour, 2 litres of water might be perfect to wet a, I don't know, maybe 25 centimetre diameter area. And then you can experiment by digging with a spade and seeing how far in an hour the water infiltrates into the root zone. And that's the key thing you want. You want the water to infiltrate into the useful root zone. And it's always a matter of, some plants you want deep roots, some plants you don't. But plants will die off in a dry period if they've only got roots at the very top of the soil profile. So you want them to be able to at least have structural support roots to be going deep enough for them to withstand windy sort of weather. That's one of the big problems in urban areas, is that the watering, the runoff and everything has changed so that we're not getting water infiltration way down into the root zone, and plants are not establishing. I misused the word root zone. If there's roots in it, if there's a root there, it's a root zone, obviously. But a lot of roots won't go where there isn't adequate water. So the root zone 30 years ago might have been 8, 10, 12 metres if the water was infiltrating that far. But if it's not ever getting that far down, the root zone is lower. Now, trees act like, balance and principles of leverage. If you have a yellow root system, the what do we call that? Why have I got a blank? Anyway, they're easier to tip over. They're easier to tip over with less force from less sideways force from wind. So you certainly don't want that along your boundaries and anywhere near your house and stuff like that. And how you water now determines how your tree, how your 6-inch pot behaves when it's a tree in 30 years' time. Okay, so Glenn, let's get to here. A lot of the ground cover helps to hold things together for the runoff. We get some the rock layers, stick piles, all help. Yeah, because they trap smaller particles. So that's the thing. And over time, it builds up into a lovely little system. On the whole, seems to be working. Yeah, just the pictures that we had of Glenn's garden, which I don't have in the studio anymore. I can't just talk about them again. But you can go back to the Habitat Gardening episode with Glenn, or the Photography Friday episode with Glenn. The weeds go, 3-layer bin. The weeds go through the shredder, and then a lot of the bottle brush leaves for the dry material. Yeah, that's the sort of point. Thanks for bringing me back to it, Glenn. Is that in your compost, you have your kitchen. People often just think kitchen scraps and stuff, but no, I put my I don't get much mail anymore, but all the mail that I do get, I take if there's a plastic window, I take that out. That goes in the rubbish. But all the things like envelopes and all that kind of stuff, that goes through the shredder and then goes into the compost or the worm farm. Sometimes if they're really going great guns, they'll quite often appreciate things like that. But that can make up some of the dry material. But paper is less woody than bottle brush leaves, eucalypt leaves, anything. I try and chop up twigs and stuff. I don't have a mulcher. We don't have anywhere near that much stuff. Someone said to me recently that they go and get like leaf litter and stuff from where, if they see people have left a pile of it somewhere, and they'll go and get a couple of buckets or something full of it and use that. Be really careful. I mean, in Sydney and in Melbourne, we're finding parks where contractors have dumped a whole lot of excess mulch at different times. It's got asbestos in it. You know, you just got to be really careful. Why I am recommending use your own mulch. Make your own mulch, your own compost. We just don't live in a time anymore where you can rely on what you buy from the landscape supplier will be what you think it is. The other thing too, also remember, like I said earlier on, that you don't know where that stuff came from unless you do know where it came from. You don't know what's in it. And then you don't know also whether it was cleared legally or not and turned into whether the prunings are from. I mean, we need to think about if they're ethically sourced in a lot of ways now. I think if you're buying from councils, you can be pretty sure that that's from their own workers, but it may often have weed seeds in it. So compost your mulch before you apply it. Then we've got things that can be like decorative mulches, and that are really effective, and that can be, especially in harsh sunlight, and things like stones and pebbles and things are really, really effective. But they come from quarries, or they come from the bottoms of creeks and rivers. They're mined. Often they're mined in countries like Indonesia and Thailand and the Philippines, and that's certainly in the Australian context. In other parts of the world, it might be other places. That's denuding someone else's landscape, the place they live, the place they rely on to grow things and to do all the things we're talking about now. But because you want a certain shade of brown or shiny or white or whatever. Now, I used to do lots of garden designs. I used to run a retail nursery. And I used to work for companies that sold this kind of stuff. It's not that long ago. We're talking 15, 20 years ago when I was doing all this stuff. And I didn't really think about where it came from. Often I would see the labels, oh yeah, product of Thailand. Okay. But they're digging up creeks and rivers and sieving it out and putting it and grading it and putting it into bags to sell at Bunnings or wherever. I think if we're fair income about things like climate change, the footprint that we leave on the earth, the harmful impacts we have, the idea that because you want white pebbles along your path because they'll look nice, but they're coming from someone's small creek in Vietnam or Thailand, or in rural New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, that we're digging it up in an industrial process to make your garden look pretty. No, those days are gone. Think about recycled glass. Things like that, if you want something as a topping in a formal situation. Or I used to use recycled glass on pots because it's a really good way of um, it's a disincentive for animals or people, kids, to dig into pots. It's not dangerous. It's all been tumbled and whatnot, but you can get your colours and you can make patterns. You can do all those things. You can be artistic. You can be expression. You can express your inner artist, but you are actually being part of a positive process, recycling and reuse, rather than something destructive. So there we go. There's my rant about mulch and stuff. We'll no doubt cover that again. It's a while now since I've been to a big retail nursery that isn't one of the big box stores that I must get out to some of the ones that I used to go to frequently and see what is being stocked nowadays and look at each of the products with a sort of critical eye as to how they're produced and whether we should be considering no longer using them. Questions or comments? That's really all I wanted to say. We will be doing some in-depth irrigation about the methods of watering and actually how you work out. This is the thing I really want to talk about because I mean we all know there's drippers and sprays and stuff like that. We all know that. How do you work out how much you need? How much water you need to apply? And then how do you know if you've turned like things like using timers and we'll try and do some of those calculations about can spending a bit of money on a timer and also on a automated system, can you save that money on things like not overwatering so you don't lose plants that you need to replace, not underwatering so you don't lose plants that you have to replace, and also can you, if you can regulate and plan for the amount of water you're going to use, can you actually end up ahead in terms of your water usage, your economic cost, actually dollar amount of water you use. So I haven't done the exercise for a long time. I used to do it all the time in commercial applications and agricultural applications. I haven't done it for a long time in a garden situation. So I'll think about the best way to do it. I might ask for someone to send me if they have a garden plan, including the plants that they have, and if they've ever, if they've checked out their soil. Oh, we didn't even talk about compaction in soil today. That's another thing that everything is interconnected when we're talking about that soil growing media. Compaction impacts water infiltration, runoff, also nutrient uptake, root penetration, so many different things. So, but there's too much to go into. I don't want to extend much more now. What I do want to do now is ask if anyone would like to tell me their first seen and heard for this morning, or for yesterday, or last night. I don't really just want to hear someone talk about birds. And I am just checking. Yes, we've got a few retweets and stuff or comments on the thing. That's very good. I do check. I don't always have time straight away. Or I might be doing something and I don't get to the comments straight away. So, first seen and heard, and any gardening questions, comments, or suggestions. That's where we're up to now. So that's a good time. I will.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, I don't. Apparently, my Google doesn't know that one. I don't know what they're wondering about. I'm just going to put on a different piece of music There we are. We'll just turn that down. We'll have some music on while we're just chilling out now. Glenn, thank you for your first herd. Pied butcherbird. What a beauty. Are they pairing up and getting active at the moment, Glenn? Like, are they looking like they're at the very start of breeding season, or are they at the tail end? Tell me. First scene, rainbow lorikeet. Yes. My first scene nearly every day is a rainbow lorikeet, but I don't count was. That would be like counting your canary or your zebra finch if you have one inside. Is that music too loud? It might be, I think. Maybe it's just me. That's probably better. Tell me. Okay, who else has got a habitat gardening question or comment or a first seen and or heard? I'm just going to have a look. Let's see. We've got still got people everywhere. Crooked Tree Birder on Instagram. Hello, Crooked Tree Birder. I might, I can't do that while we're live. Sorry. I was wanting to follow you and interact. But yeah, I wish Instagram would do their whole API thing or whatever all the other platforms do, so that we could all be one happy family. I'll update you on some other things while I'm waiting. So yeah, please, if you've got a comment or a question, let's do it. Okay. Now, I've been over-promising and under-delivering with stuff like doing the articles and everything. I'm really concentrating on getting my workflow for streams and podcasts up first. But there's still work going on. I have trialled out a few people to do assistants and whatnot, and it just so few people have understand what goes into the production of live streams and then doing the editing, video editing and stuff, that it's just so hard to get anyone to help. And the people that I could get, you know, someone was asking me the other day, I was saying to me the other day, oh, you must be doing really well with your... Piss off, this cost me thousands and thousands just to do this. So I need to be producing other content, which takes time, which takes it away from what I would prefer to be doing. So if someone wants to sponsor the Bird Emergency, and you're not a bad company, you know, I'm right up for it. I'd love someone to pay my web hosting for the year, or maybe my streaming cost for the year. It doesn't seem like a lot in isolation, but when it all adds up, and you know, I think I've told you, I live a very small life, and that's by choice. I do not want to be able to have to go and earn 50 grand a year. I just don't, because that means I don't have time to do stuff that I think is important to talk about. That's probably why nobody is doing this, right? It's probably why nobody is popping up day after day talking about stuff. But that's a different issue. But here's the exciting thing. The first, not sure whether we're releasing 4 or 6 Bird Emergency t-shirts and mugs, and there'll be a range of things, but all with the same couple of designs. They're just about ready. I have to wait until I can model them on a stream so that you can all see what they're like. And I will implement a situation where they are available for sale, but they will also be items that will be part of a membership or support package, so that you will get something by helping. That is how I would like to say it. Now, Glenn, thank you. Let's have a look. I asked for clarification. This morning's highlights for the day in the gardens: Australian hobby, male and female. Oh no, Australian hobby. Was it only one, Glenn? And are you familiar with the bird? Do you know if it was a male or a female? Male and female rose robins. Now that's a corker. That's a beauty. Plenty of wallaroos and wallabies. That's excellent. Oh, did you see that horrific social media post about the person who let their dogs harass a kangaroo that had jumped into a creek to get away from the dogs? That was horrible. Repied butcherbirds, more hearing them than seeing them about at the moment, so I don't know don't know what they're up to. Okay. Yeah, I mean, when I saw pied butcherbirds when I was away with Millie, because I mean we don't have pied butcherbirds here. We do have in some parts of Melbourne, but they haven't started in my neighbourhood yet. Obviously increasing their range. Still got the grey butcherbird, but from the behaviours that I've seen with the grey butcherbirds compared to what I saw, wherever we were stopped and we would see pied butcherbirds, the pied butcherbirds seem to operate in a much closer pair. Like they hang around together. Grey butcherbirds I usually see as solitary, and they'll be calling to each other, but not hanging out so closely together. Anecdotal, of course. So, yeah. Glenn, single hobby, male, usually have a pair breeding in the garden, only seeing the male about at present. Okay, maybe it's incubation time. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a pair of hobbies here, and they seem to be playing... saw them twice in a week, and each time they were exhibiting a behaviour that I hadn't really seen before, and that was they seemed to be chasing each other around. They seemed to be playing tag, like one would shoo through there, then another one, and then they'd be over in some couple of trees, actually where the masked lapwings hang out, and then choo, I'd see them go somewhere else. The other one follow, and then choo, choo. So I either see that pair sort of, they're obviously scouting. They're much higher, much greater altitude, and they're obviously scouting, looking for food on feeding forays. But this looked like play or display. So, yeah, hobbies are pretty fascinating. Haven't seen one didn't see any last week. Did see peregrine last week. That was fun. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I took the thing off loop, didn't I? So I put the music on and then it stopped. I didn't loop it. Here we go. Let's do it again. Let's put Feeding the Ducks on again. I need to turn that up because it's not as loud. Okay, so as I was saying, it's not long. I need to actually physically get all of the t-shirts. Probably won't get all the mugs in time, but I will start promoting the t-shirts. Yeah. Yeah. So. All right, last call for alcohol, as they would say in the. That's a classic line from the Dead Kennedys. Betty, are you here today? Vicky, we got any of the other regulars? Is Naomi around today? Just say hello if you are. I think I can drop the ticker, can't I? Because we're not coming up. Okay, other diary notes. The next Monday Monday with Holly has been shifted. I have to do a medical thing on the 27th, I think. Is that right? So we won't be having holly on that day. Holly on the 3rd of June. So that will be cool. Good, more comments. I like them when there's more comments. Let me get up here. Have a look. Betty. There we go. Good on you, Betty. Glad you're here. How's your amazingly big property going on? How's your gardening going? Let's. Now you're in the situation on that broad scale, on that large scale, Betty, that you're probably thinking of mulching and watering on, each individual plant, but not putting a big system in or broad scale mulching, because that would be massive amount of mulch. So you need to let nature do the job for you, don't you? You also have some different things to think about. I think that's fire suppression and fire retardation and basically avoiding being impacted by fire is probably something you need to think about a lot. But runoff, I think, would be something that you probably need to think about a lot too. And wind as well. You can't look at any of these things in isolation, can you? Just turn that down. That's probably a little bit more. What other news I can give you is I've been neglecting the actual podcast, the old school podcast, but I've been working. There are a bunch of episodes that are just about to go out. I just need to do the visuals and write the stuff now. Betty says, buying more bushes this week. I put down gum leaves around new plants. Fantastic. Eucalypt leaves are the best mulch you can have in areas where eucalypts grow naturally. Eucalypt leaves, not every variety, but most of them, are natural weed suppressants. In the compounds, the volatile compounds that make up eucalypt leaves, like if you're in Australia, you know that eucalypt leaves in fire can go poof, because eucalypt oil is flammable, and at a certain heat they poof, poof. But other things that are in eucalypt leaves are allelopaths. Compounds that that inhibit germination of other types of plants. So obviously eucalypts will germinate where there's a lot of leaf litter, a natural mulch of eucalypt leaves. But many other plants just simply don't germinate. The seeds do not germinate because of that allelopathic compound that, as the eucalypt leaves break down, that compounds right through that zone, the germination zone. So they naturally inhibit competition for the plants that are growing there, but they do allow natural recruitment of new seedlings, and that's how you get essentially monoculture or dominant plant species in certain habitats. And then plants invest a lot of energy as they evolve to defeat those kind of strategies. So that's why sometimes you'll see after a fire, maybe those compounds are neutralised, either vaporised, burnt, or neutralised because of the heat. And then all of those plants like acacias and some grevilleas and banksias and hovias and divisias, all these sort of pea flower plants, daisies, all of a sudden, bow, they all turn up in a former eucalypt woodland or forest. So, it's nature, isn't it amazing? Hello. I might have my Lozcam might be operating as of tomorrow, so that Loz is currently hanging upside down right near... Right... Can you see my finger? Okay, if my finger is there... Oh, another 10 centimetres. Oh, he's just bitten me outside of the... But I'll have Loz, so you can enjoy checking out Loz from now on. Betty, were you here last week? Did you see some of the examples I gave about where you can buy plants online, where you can find other sources of plants if you need to? I hope that was helpful for some people. I haven't checked the stats. I don't know if people have been watching on replays or anything. I haven't had time to go back and look at that. I'd encourage you to go and have a look at the redevelopment episode that I did yesterday. So I've trimmed off the front of that live stream so you can go and see it without 10 or 15 minutes of music at the start. Come on, Loz. Come on. Come on. Good boy. Yeah. Boy. Yeah. Okay, well, I think if the comments are drying up, Betty, I would like to know if you saw last week's show. I think we've got a guest next week. I thought we had one for this week, but as always, it's very hard to organise people, especially on things like a Saturday morning. I might have to change my strategy for interviews and maybe do interviews, pre-records, and then play them on a Saturday. The reason I want to try and avoid that is I would like you all to have the opportunity to ask questions and, talk to specialists in a particular field. And it's much harder to do you can't do it if they're not here, can you? So, okay, Betty says she's got 4 seedlings of grevilleas coming up. Will be interesting what I get in flowers from them. Now, have they come up sort of in the bush, Betty, or in like a garden kind of situation? If you get to them young enough, you can lift them out with like a trowel and put them in a pot and then nurture them and see what they are. You might get an interesting hybrid or something. That's how most of these cultivar grevilleas have turned out, where people see a seedling and dig it up and put it in a pot and go, oh, that's different to everything else I've ever seen. The seedlings seem to be getting quite tall. One of the most common in the garden, okay, they're growing fast. Betty, do you have the really common grevillea seedling that I see popping up in gardens is Grevillea robusta, the silky oak. Do you have any of those Grevillea robustas? The big tree grevilleas with the golden yellow flower. They pop up a lot, and then it really depends what you've got around. Tried, but they died. Okay, yeah. Overwatering is a big cause of their death. Also, if people are anywhere nearby are applying herbicides, especially if you've got farms nearby, because they're tall, they often get hit with spray drift from herbicides. But I'm just assuming, but that I've seen that happen a lot with people using them in windbreaks, shelter belts, and things like that. But overwatering more often kills a silky oak. They're adapted for fairly dry country. Also, competition they don't like when they're establishing. They don't like having grass and growing around them. That can start, yeah. But once they're established, they can handle anything pretty much. They're great park trees, specimen trees. On your Loz. Come on, yeah, come on. That's it, good boy. There you That's it. All right, boy. Oh, wow. They're coming in thick and fast now. Hello on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Someone on Twitter asked me a question about gardening or habitat, or tell me where you're listening from. If the numbers were fairly steady, I would still be thinking about the whole bot thing, because I've still got very little confidence. Like, I know that when you look at Twitter and you see that little graph at the bottom and it says views, how many people viewed this post, that's just someone flicking past. They don't have to stop for 5 seconds and read it. It just has to go past the screen. That's not a view. There's no way you can count that as a view. All right, I'm going to let the song run one more time. So we're talking maybe 4 or 5 minutes. I'll just go back to Instagram and see. Yeah, people are joining on Instagram and then leaving. So I think I'm going to have to. I'll keep that open today, and I'll go and find those people and say hello. I need to do some Instagram education, don't I? Yeah, okay. Who's doing gardening today? Who's going out and doing some gardening? Is that right, Loz? I actually want to set a microphone up for Loz as well on his playpen so that you can hear... Ow! Don't bite me like that. Oh. Ow. He didn't just nibble me in a playful way, then he bit me hard. Yeah, he gets he gets very excited with this one particular toy. And I changed it, so I hung it on something slightly longer so it swings a bit more today, and he's now very excited and he can reach me. Anyway, all right. Who's going gardening? Who's doing any gardening? Who's buying anything today in the gardening category? Yeah, I think we are getting to the end. So, folks, on all of the platforms, I'm happy if you are watching and enjoying on all of the platforms. That's great. But the best, you can comment better on YouTube and Facebook. That's why nearly all the comments are from people on YouTube and Facebook. So that's what I would invite you to do. Twitch is good too, but generally over time, all the comments I used to get from Twitch were just people doing spamming, wasn't it? But we haven't had that for a long time. So hello, Twitch. It's great. And I do like when Twitch are here. If I can put the time into it, I really want to do just some fun social kind of streams on Twitch, and maybe on a separate YouTube channel so that I don't have to be necessarily bird focused. Anyone interested in that? Anyone interested in that at all? I do want to tell the story about how birds saved my life, but I don't want to tell that story on the bird emergency because it's really more just personal, and it doesn't feel like it belongs on the bird emergency. So I think, but Twitch, I might be doing my Twitch, because the Twitch channel is not called The Bird Emergency. The Twitch channel is called Grant Bird Nerd. I might just change it to Grant. But yes, that's... yeah. Let me know. Would you be interested in that? I want to talk about music. The music that was significant for me. I am setting up some interviews too with people that were either very influential for me or that I regard as significant people who have done significant things. That's not going to be on the bird emergency either. That would probably That will probably be on the Not Just Another Podcast channel. All right, I think that's that. I'm not getting any more questions. We'll just take that off loop, and we'll wait until that finishes. Glenn, enjoy your day in the Botanic Gardens. I hope you do see something really extraordinary, and I hope if you're doing a tour, I hope people are interested and they learn a lot about the Mount Annan Botanic Gardens, and that they appreciate the amazing plants and birds that are there, and also have fun taking a mushroom shot. That will be great. Yeah, Betty, enjoy your gardening. Everyone else, all you X and Twitter people, do join in sometime. It's much more fun. I am Grant. I am a bird nerd. This has been Habitat Gardening on the Bird Emergency. If you don't already know, the Bird Emergency began several years ago as an audio podcast. You can find it at thebirdemergency.com/podcast. I would love it if you are not already subscribed to the YouTube channel. Just head off to thebirdemergency.com/YouTube. And I hope you'll join me next Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is GMT +10 for anyone who is international. And I hope you'll join me for all of the interesting things that are coming up next week. Tuesday, talking about New Zealand's fast-track legislation. Wednesday, talking about mistletoe, unravelling the myths of mistletoe with Dr. Dave Watson from Charles Sturt University. Dr. Dave on Twitter. What did I say? That was Wednesday, and then we'll be back next Saturday. There'll be lots of other things, but nothing else is actually locked in. The following Monday, Gregory and Andrews on Monday with me and Gregory. And that will be midday on the 13th. So there we are. Exactly, Loz. Good on you. Good point. That's a very good note to leave it on. Thanks for being with me on Habitat Gardening. Enjoy your day. Go and do something fun and enjoy the plants and the birds and the creepy crawlies and the furry critters and the spiders and the spider webs that might be around you today. See you, bird nerds, plant nerds.